The information that we're going to be covering in this three-part series titled John Warner IV, Little Anton, and Disclosure contains subject matter that will likely challenge many of you, just as it's challenged myself and my colleagues Jean-Luc and John Majorowski. And so before we begin this presentation, I think it is extremely important to highlight the primary reason for our decision to cover this. The reason being that the source of this information is a man whose position within two extremely influential and affluent American families has afforded him the ability to obtain information and establish networks with individuals that the vast majority of us would be unable to gain access to. John Warner IV is a member of both the Warner and Mellon family dynasty. His father is former Senator John Warner III, and he is also the third cousin to the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and current major proponent for transparency on the UFO-UAP issue, Christopher Mellon. It is important to note that John Warner IV is on good terms with his family. He considers Christopher Mellon to be a friend as well as a relative. He has not been ostracized by his family for writing his book, Little Anton. That being said, our coverage of this issue does not necessarily mean that John's views represent the views of myself or my colleagues, but we feel that due to the nature of the source, it is worth covering the claims that John has put forward extensively. I would also like to let you all know that after this three-part series is concluded, I will be having John Warner IV onto Project Unity for an interview, and this will hopefully provide even further clarity as to why John Warner has the opinions that he has. All I ask is that you keep an open mind, and with that being said, I hope you enjoy the third and final part of this series regarding John Warner IV, his book Little Anton, and disclosure of the UFO reality as he sees it. So this is the first time I've ever done something that's taken 3 days to to finalize, you know?
You might realize anything you do with me takes, it's like that. It either takes forever and doesn't happen, or it takes some days. But,
well, yeah, for those watching, we're not just weirdly changing our clothes. This has happened over the course of 3 days.
Or we're weirdly changing our clothes too.
I mean, or we're weirdly changing our clothes.
Either way,
you decide. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell.
Yeah.
Right.
Time to kick off the last segment of this.
Yeah. So where are we going to start today?
Well, I think that it would probably be good to maybe brush up a little bit further on what this book is about. Perhaps give a little bit more of a little brief overview, at least in your mind, what you feel like this book is representing.
Well, in the words of the man himself, the author, John Warner IV, what he's presenting is disclosure. I mean, he pretty much says it in that first email to me, and in that message on the forum, like he says that this to him is his version of disclosure. And then in the TTSA document, in his notes, he says, if you want to know disclosure, what my feeling of this, what it really is, you can either read my book Little Anton, or take the shortcut and just read these notes. So basically, the Little Anton's the labour of love. From what I'm taking it, is, I mean, it's a huge book, and it's really involved. Nearly every single character is a real person, or there's plenty of them anyway. You know, like everything he's talking about is supposedly what he believes is real or really happened from his studies and from his privileged position to be in a family or two families that were closely linked to this sort of stuff. So, yeah, we're in a privileged position to be in touch with him, especially at a time in his life where it's almost like it's like perfect timing. It's like, you know, we talked about it off camera before, but the reality of it seems to be that he's actually been out on camera saying these things for a couple of years now, on quite nicely made interviews, but with historians, with book people, literary types, not people like us who are obsessed with the ancient mysteries of Freemasonry and Rosicrucians and Crowley and UFOs.
Or even just UFOs, yeah.
Yeah, UFO. Sorry, let's simplify it. UFOs, because that's where it all starts, UFOs. So, like, that's the truth. So really, like, he's been out there talking about anti-gravity machines to people who probably don't know what the hell he's talking about. Or maybe they do. I don't want to say that, but maybe they do. But maybe they don't really care about what that actually means.
Well, this is what impresses me about it, to be honest, is, amongst other things, is the fact that he hasn't been pushing it into the UFO community. And we've said this
No.
a few times in the interview already, but it's not like he emailed you. You found him on an extremely obscure website that wasn't even UFO related. It was just alternative history related. And the books themselves, what I find really quite interesting about them is they're not actually, if you were to read the back of the book as someone who hasn't done UFO research, you'd be like, oh, this is a deep dive into the history of Porsche, the car company, and its involvement in World War II with the Nazi German party. And it's like an intelligence espionage style thriller. Oh, that sounds really interesting. But then when you open up the book and you start reading through it, it's embedded with these extremely intense, nods towards things in ufology and phenomenology that we're all familiar with. But you would never get that hint really from just looking at the book. I've ordered the copies today actually, and even the front cover is a racing car. It's not suggestive of UFO content. So it's not like he's been pushing this out. He's not on Gaia TV, doing programs about disclosure and how he's connected to one of these mysterious families. It's not like it's not like he's using the background with people like Christopher Mellon being in his family to push this forward and go, look, I've got the answers because I'm, related to X, Y, and B. It's not like that at all. It's very nuanced.
And this book's been published, but clearly, it's been his labor of love. He's
Right.
published it, and for whatever reason, people haven't picked up on it in any way. And it's like, I think what's really interesting about it, and I haven't asked him why he actually bothered to talk to me about these things and to pass them on, and to bring you guys into this and stuff. I mean, he told me why. Is that this is what he knows and this is what he believes. This is what he's created. You know what I'm saying? And it's like he's left all the clues there, and those clues are way more palatable and easy to take than anything that To the Stars Academy offered, because, as he states, they were so hampered by CIA, DOD, all that stuff. No, what do I know? I mean, I'm a guy who lives in a house in England. I'm not in any of those organisations. But when you start seeing it for it, like TTSA was really exciting. It was all these things, but you could tell it was like, are we ever going to know the truth really from these guys? And what is the truth? That's the concept of it. Like, the truth for them would have been to produce some sort of anti-gravity machine and hope enough people read the Peter Lavender authored books to create some kind of vibe that they might follow up on the occult, which might lead them to this stuff. It takes a lot of work, and it's almost an initiation in itself. And I think and the other issue here as well is that John is not a Freemason. He's not a Rosicrucian. He considers himself part of the White Illuminati. His words.
Right.
He also said to me,
but just to clarify, by white Illuminati, you mean like white hat, black hat, white as in the good version.
The good guys, yeah, part of the good guys, right? Yeah.
He's white Illuminati. Like, he thinks that everybody should know this. His dad obviously thinks everyone should know this. And there's another video online of him talking to his dad about all this. And his dad's on there. He's a
link will be in the description box.
90-year-old ex-senator and secretary for the Navy. And he's on there talking about this exact stuff. And it's crazy. It is crazy that it's taken this. Some of this stuff has been online for 2 years. The book was published in 2019 or before, maybe.
Yeah.
We all just sit here watching the videos of UFOs that look like shiitake mushrooms, man. And on really bad footage and going on about it when it's there. There's somebody telling you with all the right connections what's going on.
It blows my mind that this has gone under the radar of the UFO community. I mean, there's one person that's connected to the community that I know has been in contact with him, because I was listening to their pretty awesome interviews, actually. It was the 2-part podcast on John Warner's website. Guys, links will be in the description box, so please make sure you click in the description box and check out all the links that we're going to be putting in there, because the podcasts I would really recommend people listen to. It gives you a good idea for his character and his level of intelligence. But as you said, he was talking to his father, Senator John Warner, but he was also having a 2-part conversation with Nick Cook. Now, I've interviewed Nick Cook. He's the author of The Hunt for Zero Point, UK defense analyst,
obviously comes from the nuts and bolts perspective of this and has started to dip his toes into the consciousness aspect. But these guys are sitting down having a conversation about Nazi German history and electrogravitic studies. And, that's the one link I've found. I actually sent Nick an email the other day, just like, I found you inside a rabbit hole, Nick.
How do you respond to people who call you and I conspiracy theorists?
Back in good old sort of pre-internet days, I was trained to be a sleuthing reporter. I had some very good teachers who taught me about the sanctity of facts. It doesn't bother me anymore what people say, but I am meticulous and scrupulous when it comes to fact-checking.
Someone else termed it a conspiracy researcher rather than a theorist. And I like that term better because I'm like you, we're researching based on the facts available and then filling in the gaps as best we can with logic and some speculation. And I think that's reflected in your book and my book. We sweat the details.
I love the details in the chapters you shared with me. I love that stuff. I mean, you clearly have a real hankering for getting into the nitty-gritty and the detail of the history and the technology. I really like that about what you wrote.
Nick, today we're living in an era of quote-unquote fake news. What advice do you have for people who don't know who or what to believe?
I think the era of objective truth is rapidly disappearing, and I think the era of subjective truth is assuming increased prominence. For me, my subjective truth needs to be rationalized by looking at multiple points on the compass of all these sort of, different things that make up a story. And when I've been around the compass and I've looked at the story from 360 degrees, only then am I sort of satisfied as to what that story represents for me as truth. There is very little hard and fast truth you can actually point to and say, that's fact. It makes for a chaotic and unstable world.
He seems to be the only tangible connection to the UFO community is Nick Cook, but that it's not permeated out any further than that. We seem to be the only people who are covering this right now.
Well, yeah, and he actually told me, he's given me a number of names of people who actually want to know the truth should look at. And you know what? I've read Nick Cook's book a while ago. I wouldn't have put two and two together. I also like some of the other people that he's put me onto, which we'll put you all onto, I will share the names, are absolutely fascinating. But because they present themselves as more like historians in some ways, it's just gone under the radar. So there's one guy who's an expert in, and John, I can't remember his name, an expert in the Sonora Aero Club. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Is it Bosley?
Bosley, yeah, Walter Bosley.
Yeah.
Walter
Bosley.
He's a Freemason too, by the way.
The guy's background is like,
yeah, Walter Bosley has he does like a nightly. He has a YouTube channel. He does like a nightly live video, almost nightly, and he's just like, and people are he's just talking about everything. The guy's done years of research, and he's done some amazing research. There's a video I'll drop in here too as well in the description that goes into like a whole 2-hour presentation of basically the German influence in the 1800s in the United States and the societies that created all these airships that were just beyond. Basically, they were anti-gravitic airships in the 1800s. From what are you saying, and from the research that you're doing?
And the vibe of that organization was that it was wealthy benefactors coming out of I think that it was funneling via New York, but coming out of Europe and wherever else out there. Like again, some form of secret organization to which maybe Tesla might have been part of. So you start heading down the secret society stuff again, like the connections to this hidden information, and it gets pretty wild.
No, it gets wild quick. I mean, and it's the same thing like you're saying. It's connected to historians and not necessarily people that are around like us talking about UFOs and consciousness and all these things. It's more of a historical nuts and bolts kind of event type based researchers. And I think it's probably for a reason though, too, because, just until basically recently, a lot of these people didn't want to step foot anywhere near UAP, UFO studies, and let alone consciousness studies or any of that. They just didn't want any part of it, and there's just the separation. But I think that the thing that I would give TTSA credit for still is getting the New York Times and the videos released and getting it into the mainstream conversation so that people aren't freaked out and run away anytime you say any of these things.
Oh yeah, they've played an integral role in destigmatization.
Totally.
The big thing as well is with John is that, the reality of it is that he wants to see a shift in the way the world runs, and he's in a position to see, or to come to the realization, and I think we already mentioned this, that certain families that are part of this so-called Committee of 300 who work for the 13 Illuminati families. Again, crazy stuff. Like he said that essentially a lot of them don't even know they are, if you know what I mean. Especially the sons of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Like, until they know they are, until it happens, until you realise you're part of that machine, and that's the way it is. And I think that, I was reading a bit of Jim Mars today. I like Jim Mars a lot, and he goes into these exact things. His theories on this stuff were exactly the same, and he died. It can't have been that long ago. Sad he went, because
2 years ago, I think.
On track. Jim
Well,
Mars,
John's also saying that a lot of these people who are supposedly in this committee of 300 families are asleep at the wheel. It's not a organized kind of group of people in robes cackling in a room, or but he did indicate that a lot of these people are not a part of that type of thing. It's like there's a niche patriarchal element of it that is like that, but then the majority are just kind of asleep at the wheel.
Well, to quote in one of his emails, like, I'll have to find
I think I remembered it. They're asleep at the switch on their yachts.
So, on their yachts, like right. They're just chilling out.
They're old hippies, like
old hippies,
on their yachts. And here you go, look at this one. Right, I've just pulled this email up. Like, we had a good chat about the divine feminine. Comes into a lot of this stuff, like, well, essentially because the cosmos is feminine. That's the concept of everything. So our creator is feminine. So, not my words, but I believe that too. But here's an email from him. JL, I'd like to hear more about your interest in life and family. The video with you three guys, us, was amazing. You guys are tapped into the universe hard. I told him about a place that it's got connections to my stuff. And he said, that water spa town in England, I've heard of it. I believe many women druids of old frequented the place for hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps. I discuss the divine feminine a lot in my book. Women have been tortured in inquisitions and witch hunts for millennia. It has to stop. Women should rule the USA. The patriarchal men have fucked it all up. See the Bohemian Grove. It's a pedo party born on demonic mass and murder. There you go. That's his words.
Yeah. That's somebody you would know, right? I mean,
yeah, full on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the scary part of it, there's always the light in the dark, right? There has to be too. The scary part about this is, like we just said, most people have no idea they're even involved in this, or they are involved in, and they're just the people keeping the lights on, or they don't care, And then there's this select element at the very top in a patriarchal part that are still doing sacrifices, that are still doing the things that happened millennia ago to the gods and whoever they're beholden to, and in ceremonies and esoteric weird things that we've talked about and read about in books and things like that. So there's this small niche that's happening, and then the other half doesn't even know what's going on.
I think that's not. Sorry, go on.
No, it's just scary, man.
No, all I was going to say is it's not easy to digest that, and it's one of those things where is it that we don't believe it because it's illogical? I mean, obviously this stuff's pretty crazy and fantastical, but is it that we don't believe it because of that, or because people don't want to believe it? It's a lot of the times when you're doing this type of research, you end up honing around areas of the subject where you actually quite like the idea of that reality. A lot of people are guilty of falling into a bias, and so when something comes along where it goes, hey, that stuff might be real, but on top of that there's all of these secret families and this terrible, blah, 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 people go, oh, whoa, I didn't sign up for that. That's not what I wanted to get out of my research into this field, so I reject it. And I think that people have to be careful not to do that straight away, and to just listen a little more carefully, especially when it's coming from sources like John Warner. That's kind of my main takeaway from this entire conversation, is that we're talking about something that has been talked about by other researchers, some of them very controversial, some of them have even been completely deplatformed for talking about those types of areas, because of the falling out they might have had with the communities. But then you've got someone who is not trying to rustle up a load of people out of the UFO community. He's just outside of this kind of stuff, and he's saying the same thing. And he's got these connections to these families.
One thing about him is that he clearly doesn't have a big ego, because otherwise he would be out there shouting it, "I'm the king of disclosure."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's when he said that as much. He doesn't want to be that guy. He doesn't want to become like Stephen Greer. He don't want to become, but he also doesn't mind us talking about him as him. But
listening to his YouTube videos. Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, listening to his YouTube videos, I don't pick up an ego at all. He really seems like a down-to-earth guy, which is kind of an achievement in of itself, being from such a kind of crazy background. Something that I'd never imagine being involved in.
Well, nobody, let's face it, right? Like, I sort of talk about my stuff a little bit here and there to people. No, apart from you guys, hardly anybody's bothered. But all of a sudden, it's not him just telling me all this stuff. He's asking me stuff. Tell me about you.
Yeah.
So it's like a two-way thing. It's nice, man. I'll be honest with you. Like, I've been in coronavirus lockdown in the UK for time now. Like,
tell me about it.
And this sort of conversation with you guys is a godsend. And then having a conversation with John as well, and getting some just diamond information, but also meeting a nice guy. That's cool.
You seem to be building a real rapport with him. Like, that's what's really nice about this, is you guys seem to genuinely be having a good back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't messaged back for a few days because he sent me so much, and quite honestly, some of it, some of it's scary, man. Like, not scary, but
no, a lot of it's fucking scary, man. I'm telling you.
Dude,
and I'm not even trying to beat around the bush on it. I mean, some of it is. I mean, a lot of people will just turn their shit off because they can't handle it. Like Jay said, you just fucking can't handle it. I mentioned, I was talking to somebody else about this, my wife, who also I talked to him in lockdown too, right? I mean, but she brought up the same thing I'm thinking. She's like, well, aren't you scared? Like, isn't he scared? Like, are you worried about? I'm like, if these people are the people that he says they are, and he should know, and they are, don't you think they would not want you talking about this shit? And I'm like,
I asked him that, man. Hang on, let me find his reply to that.
Oh, you actually asked him?
Yeah. Hang on, let's have a look.
Good.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, you know what? Like, because again, I'll be honest, part of me just goes, oh my God, because, part of me, and I might be delusional here, but like, it feels like the information he's giving us is essentially what TTSA's information was, the thing that Tom DeLonge was probably giving. But he was giving it in a way that was completely different. He wants some friendly guy who actually can be backed up with names. It was these shadowy dudes in rooms in Washington or the desert or I don't know where. It's different, but it's the same thing. It's like when you read this stuff, you go, if this is what it was, I can see why. But and let me just find this thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this, while you're finding out, a lot of this information, I mean, there's some specifics here that seem to be unique, but a lot of this information is stuff that's been echoed already. It's just, again, it comes back to who the source of this information is right now, who's discussing this, who is saying that this is actually the way it is. And, it turns out to be quite an influential guy from an influential family. So, a family, again, which is embedded in intelligence in America for a long, long time. So
the foundational founder member of intelligence, right?
Of intelligence, right? Yeah. So we're
America,
talking about huge players in the intelligence game. Like, some of the biggest, most respected, with undeniable connections and networks to things that we would never be able to have. Even John, I've listened to some of his podcasts, even just by proxy of being a member of these families without having to be in the intelligence communities themselves. He's been afforded the opportunities to go networking and speaking with people that we'd just never be able to speak with just by, the merit of his family legacy. And so, that alone should give you guys a little bit of an idea of why we want to discuss this and put it out there, because there's more to it when it comes from someone like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not just me telling you.
yeah, exactly.
It's not
if you phone me up at 3 a.m. like, hey, dude, the Anunnaki, and I'll be like, okay, like, John, calm down.
Yeah. Just go have a beer and take a nap. I don't know. Yeah.
I still can't find this, but I'll keep looking as well.
Keep looking, and
it's good. We'll circle back. You're right. No, it lends so much weight to it, and not to say that it's completely gospel, right? Like you said,
No,
there's
a
lot of information that's already been publicly available for years, and there's nothing to say that even somebody at his level could be fed disinformation as well, and that's not above the realm of any of this. I mean, especially when you're talking about the level of, if this is true, what we're talking about, the level, not only intelligence agency, but the phenomenon itself. To get out, right? So you got to put that in there with like, what is it and what it's not. But I'm not discounting it at all. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate there. Yeah,
we're balancing this out with what we know as researchers, based on our time in the community, and I think we can all agree that we find John to be a respectful guy and a very intelligent guy. So there's no way that we're fully discounting this at all. But we're having a discussion. We're having an open discussion, and I want people who are listening to pick up on that vibe, because we're not saying it's absolute fact, but we're also not saying that this is a load of conspiracy junk, that we shouldn't be paying attention to, because I think that there's something in the middle ground here that is very interesting, and that's what I want to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like, because I'm just blown away that it's actually, this has actually happened, and I'm really, I'm stoked by it. But the ramifications for it for people like us are, because there's so much weight behind this individual, especially linking into the current full-blown ufology movement with Chris Mellon, plus the CIA connection, Paul Mellon, his dad, the senator, and you start reading it, and you go, really? Like, so listen, every religion essentially is wrong. Not what I just made up. Like, there's Anunnaki slave trader races mixed in with our top bloodlines who still do it. There's, it's crazy shit. What else was it? There's portals all around the world that take us to anywhere in the universe. What was that one last night? Elon Musk is making the black triangles.
Yeah, what was that? The
nuclear powered
batteries.
Nuclear powered batteries for black triangles.
There's one here. A former admiral once told me that you'll bump into an Anunnaki or a Grey every day walking around the Pentagon.
That's incredible.
So whether that means you bump into someone like who's a human-looking dude who's 4,000 or 5,000 years ago had a relative that was an Anunnaki, is that the same, or are they Anunnaki?
Well, yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Is it like, are we, because other people have said they're walking amongst us, and is that literal? Right now, there are ETs that are genuinely what we would consider to be ETs walking amongst us, or is it just that the bloodlines of these ETs have survived and they're still present, and that these people are in key positions of power?
And they probably don't even know. If we do the math,
well, yeah,
I'm not good at math, and I'm not that great at math, but if you do the math and the 300 family, we just a loose number of 300, but the 13 families, and say even they're keeping a secret compartmentalized from everybody else, there's this little top that know that. But are these other people just bouncing around and maybe getting positions because of their connections and things like that, or maybe their own merit, but maybe they are, part of this bloodline, have no clue. Hell, all of us could be part of this bloodline and we have no idea. Or other people all over the planet. I mean, and think of this was my thought earlier today too, is like, John Warner's been in this, there's other people that have probably gone the route of, piss off, I'm not going to marry one of the other 13 families. I'm going to do what I want. Screw you. I don't want your money. I'm just going to do my thing. And that's probably happened more times than we can count as well. We've gotten free will, right? So, I mean, there's no saying if you want to piss away your billions or trillions of dollars and you just want to go be the guy that digs a ditch for the rest of your life, cool. There's a bunch of dudes out there, and who's to say that, somewhere down the line, the blood, mixes out, and now it's the majority of the people on the planet.
Yeah, no, totally.
Just my theory. Coming up with it.
I think that the bloodline stuff, because it sets some people's teeth on edge, because you head down the fascist route, start talking about, but if you're talking about something that really does involve thousands of years of genetic fascists, then maybe it's the right way to talk about stuff. But yeah, it puts people off, doesn't it? Like, yeah. I was going to say before, when we were talking about this stuff and about how it affects us, about how we look at it, it's almost like I hear quite a lot that ufology is not political. but it is, or ideological anyway. Because a lot of the sort of far-right ufology or the right-wing ufology probably is a lot more of the crazy light warrior stuff leading into Guantanamo Bay, QAnon, and taking liberals to Guantanamo Bay and all that nut stuff, which also pulls in greys and aliens and Anunnaki, like all the wild conspiracies. On the flip side, the liberal stuff is way more kind of like, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but probably more like not like that, and probably the stuff we're more inclined, or I'm more inclined to want to read. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing is, like lately, those two lines have blurred completely, and at least in America, and I'm just speaking generally here, before the QAnon shit and all that, or whatever. Like nobody was going down the whole path of people kidnapping children and drinking their blood for adrenochrome and all this shit 4 years ago, 5 years ago, right? Like that didn't enter, and especially into the, I would say, far right wing. As part of the conspiracy side of everything here in America, that was not it. It was more like the conservatives versus the liberals, and it was like more the age old political divisions, right? That was just whatever. But then when you start throwing this stuff in there, which is baffling, because you wouldn't see that. You would think the conservative side would be more like, that's bullshit, we're not going to believe it. But like they were the ones that kind of latched onto it harder than most people, which is even more bizarre in my mind. And it goes all the way down to like the voter fraud and like all these other conspiracies. And it's like I don't know how that whole thing switched from one side to the other, but it seems like it's not only, like you said, Jean-Luc, is not only like something you'd usually be interested in, but like the other sides is starting to believe stuff that is not mainstream and fringy.
Well, that's it. And it's kind of like, because, and I suppose this is why, John Warner has said quite a few times in his work, in the notes and so on, that TTSA is just a it's a valiant effort, or a valiant effort, but it's too weak. It's too wishy-washy. What's it ever going to bring? Like, it brings, I'll tell you what it does bring, actually. It gives anybody who has researched hard enough, brings them to this point. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe what it is a linchpin to make people search. Because every single one of those names connected to that organization is in a massive adventure itself, yeah? You type in one of those names, you go down a rabbit hole that you can probably spend a year investigating for how put off alone, And then all the other guys, like, just you know what I'm saying?
I'm curious as to what the other staff are gonna do. There's quite a few different people in To the Stars Academy when you actually look at their their bios, and you've got these I can't actually remember their names, but different scientists and people in different areas. The ones that are never done interviews, never appeared on unidentified, but are listed as people involved in the effort. And we haven't really been given an indication of what they've been up to, and so I wonder.
A lot of it's biomedical.
Yeah, biomedical. Also, there was like a biochemical weapons expert from the CIA or something like that. So there's some really interesting characters knocking about on the To the Stars Academy webpage that haven't been given any spotlight. And I wonder what's going to happen with them, and whether or not they're going to remain.
Maybe what I need to start doing is seeing who their third cousins are.
Well, maybe you've got a talent for reaching out to influential third cousins.
Yeah. Shit, I'm trying to remember who my third cousins are.
I was speaking to my third cousin the other day. He'd never heard of all this stuff, and I was giving him a quick brief update of what's been going on in America, and he was like, "I can't believe this is real." I was thinking he had no idea about any of the normal stuff, not this stuff we're talking about, the crazy kind of more advanced level, but just the surface level 2017 to 2021 US updates. And I was giving him the background on that, and it was actually quite encouraging, because he's a guy he's just a normal dude, works in construction, and we hadn't spoken for a while, and we had a phone call because he saw a status that I put up about interviewing Lou Elizondo, and he was like, "I've got to ask you what this is all about." And so I just gave him a 20-25 minute background on everything that's been going on, and he was just like, "Wow, like there's no way that you can really argue with that, is it?" And it was like, "Nope, it's real."
Let's go back to finding the email where we find out if they're going to come find us and throw us in a van.
Yeah, because try and find that. I want to see what he responded with.
And that's the thing I was trying to tell her. I was like, it's not me saying this shit. It's this guy,
Yeah.
and it's this guy. It's. I'm just telling you what he's saying. I'm not coming.
That's the
out
point.
with this
You know,
shit.
it's the age-old adage: don't shoot the messenger.
Right.
You know, we're just the messengers here. You know, don't kick me down a Spartan hole.
Right.
Oh yeah, exactly.
No, man, it ain't worth it.
No.
Well, let's have a look at this one. Here's something cool. This is the thing. It's just all gold. Like I'm just flicking through emails. Yeah. Listen to this bit. Paul Mellon told me that he and his wife Mary visited Carl Jung many times in Switzerland. He told me that Jung later worked with Alan Dulles assessing Hitler's sanity during the war. That's when Jung joined the OSS, Agent 488. Don't be fooled by mainstream accounts of the OSS. It was not a chicken shit outfit by intelligence standards. They handled the UFO stuff and gave it to Donovan, who gave it to FDR. They need the Harvard Yale intellectuals like Paul. FDR had his own unit, the IPU, the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, Army G2, Navy ONI. Jung told the sorry, mate.
No, go on.
Yeah, Jung told the Majestic 12 group in 1948 that the Foo Fighter issue was worse than they thought. The rudder might be taken from our grasp, is what he said.
The what?
The rudder.
The rudder.
Oh, okay.
The rudder, yeah. The rudder might be taken from our grasp. He was prophetic, but truth be told, I think the rudder was stolen from us around the time of Atlantis' fall.
Wow.
Shit.
That's, you know again, what I mean? that's from John, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says, was Paul Mellon later on in 1956 a member of MJ12 with his buddy Dulles? I honestly don't know. Probably not, but he was close to the players and he helped fund the CIA, NASA, and the NSA. He, Nelson, Rockefeller, and Dulles were all on the CFR and Jason societies together. So, yeah, he's just laying it out.
This is the thing. And also this amazing personal connection to Carl Jung, because, you know, it seems like the Mellon family, especially Paul and Mary Mellon, were integral in disseminating Jungian psychology throughout very kind of high society academic think tanks and establishments and institutes, right? Is that correct? They kind of embedded this understanding and this more esoteric understanding through their high society networks.
Now I haven't taken psychology courses in a long time. Jean-Luc, you probably can speak more eloquently than this than I have, but isn't Carl Jung still held up in the
absolutely
realm of psychology as like the guy?
Psychoanalysis, I think that for me, the reason I got so interested in him is because he was so interested in the occult. I suppose. Like, I mean, I don't mean in terms of the dark stuff, like just what's hidden.
No, but like if I took psychology 101 for college, right, and just had to take it, and it was like Carl Jung.
Day one, that name will come up. These people, and they'll run through the usual names. And Carl Jung will be one of the top ones.
Yeah,
but
totally.
He is the father of it. I mean, that's why. I mean, that's when you get into all this stuff. Like, essentially, what he says is that the fact that Paul and Mary Mellon apparently they were both clients of his. I said students the other night, clients who then became friends and then and then became students, I suppose. And that was when the Bollingen Foundation got set up and so on and so forth.
How do you spell that, by the way, the Bollingen Foundation?
Well, Bollingen is Bollingen.
Bollingen, right.
Yeah. And that's named after Jung's Bollingen Tower, which he built himself and then practiced some of his more alchemical sort of working. Have a look at it.
And that was the Paul and Mary that named it the Bollingen Foundation.
Yeah, well, there's a letter from Paul Jung to Mary Mellon saying, I love your diabolical idea to continue our work in America under the Bollingen Foundation. So like the work that he was doing, obviously if he started working for the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, analysing people like Hitler, and then from that, a lot of that became sort of the propaganda stuff. The formation of mind control learned by some of the scientists that came over on paperclip and the SS people they were involved in all that. So it gets pretty dark. So in terms of, a big part of this is the MK Ultra or the birth of that too. mind control,
psychotronic weapons.
Yeah,
again, this echoes back to things like Slide 9 and ATIP.
Yeah. This is madness, but I recorded an album with a band when I was like 17, right? And in the studio, there was this guy, it was like a friend of the engineer, and he came in, and this guy was older guy, pretty crazy, right? And I can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me, but dude like rewired my guitar in like 30 seconds. And, he was like a sound guy in the region, and he wasn't allowed to be the sound guy anymore. And I asked him one time, I'm like, well, what'd you do? And he said he got into studies, and he got into some work from German, and I can't remember. It was part of the whole, psychotronic weapons and things like that. But what he found out, there was different frequencies. So he would like run the sound for a band, like at a bar, right? Like a big bar, the band would come in, and he would be like the guy working the board, right? And he would play like different tones at different hertz, like underneath all this shit, to see if it would work, because he's reading about this guy. He's like, you played this one tone, you can make everybody act like they're drunk, even if they haven't drank a drop, and they fall over and throwing up and shit. And the other stuff, you can make them like literally, pee their pants or whatever, right? Like, and all this stuff. And he got like, somebody figured it out or whatever, and the dude wasn't allowed. And I was like, you're fucking crazy, dude. But then he like, gave me some information. And back then you had to go to the library, right? And you dug through it. But I was like, holy shit, that was a thing. Wow, it reminds me of all this, it's a psychotronic weapon thing where you can play certain tones and make people fucking do whatever.
Kind of goes back to the whole idea of everything's vibration, right? And if we're vibrational beings, then certain frequencies are going to cause certain changes in our vibrational state, which I suppose then echoes into your emotional, physical, cognitive states and makes you act differently. I mean, the only one that I've ever heard of was off of a kind of like kids science show, which was the brown noise.
The brown note, yeah, that makes you poop your pants.
Makes you poop yourself, yeah. But you can only imagine that in the black world, they've got sound oscillation weapon systems of some form,
Well, that shows up in the notes too. That's another thing that reminded me of. There was some kind of sound device that was more detrimental than a nuke or something.
Oh yeah.
Was that in his notes?
Yeah. Like I mean, I read about this previously as well. Tesla apparently had been working on this stuff, and essentially, like, they reckon that some of the stuff that he'd invented to do with frequency was, Earth destroying, planet destroying.
Yeah. Like the Tesla death ray and things like that.
Yeah, and like one of the things that he discovered was that there was a frequency that caused basically widespread depression.
Oh, that's disconcerting, isn't it?
It's called COVID. It's called the COVID.
I think it was Russia that had started to work on that, and that's probably when you started to see American agents becoming ill in hotels when they're on diplomatic visits to certain countries.
That's recent. That's really recent too. Like the whole Cuba thing and all these other. It's definitely recent.
It is recent, and but some of it is and some of it isn't. So like, but yeah, the Cuba stuff in Havana, that's serious stuff. Well, anyway, wild, man. Also, just wild, isn't it?
I know. You, like, we were just talking a little bit about this. You can take one or two things out of these notes that he gave you, and we can have like a 3-hour discussion on it.
Here's one. All right, here's one, just quickly, right? How cool is that thing today? All right, so we've been talking about dark because of what Holden said.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny, like, some people just, I've seen people saying, like, I can't believe people actually want to listen to something they watched on a Netflix show. Are they idiots? Yeah. You know what? I think sometimes you've got to use intuition, because then when John replies to us on one comment regarding it and says dark's based on a project at Montauk, yeah, right, so it just tells you straight out. Look at that, time portals.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that might not be true. But
no, but it's one more link in the connection, because like you said, Holden said the same type of things. He basically said that dark was, I mean, this guy, sorry to hijack this, just wanted to give some clarity on this, is that Holden had said that he was an intelligence consultant on all 3 seasons of Dark, and that it contained more real science to do with the phenomenon than anything that's ever really been shown before, but it's just done in a nuanced fashion. There's no UFOs in Dark. It's about time travel. But again, a lot of the conversations I've had with Holden about technological assets have to do with time travel, which is interesting.
Yeah, and in terms of as well, like with the dark stuff, and it might not just be time, it might be dimensional, because that story takes you into other dimensions, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, it does. Totally different dimensions.
And again, if you start looking into a lot of John's notes, same stuff, into interdimensional
and things happening in threes, right? Things happening in threes. That seems to be that plays a part in Dark.
There's so much. I mean, and John, you'll be watching this hopefully before we publish it. So, you tell us anything that's wrong before we go there.
Yeah. No doubt.
We'll leave that in for John.
For those that don't know, what exactly is Montauk?
Well, it was, people might have heard of the Philadelphia experiment, which was, there was a big film in the 80s, and prior to that, stories about it, essentially they were trying to, I think it was, the story of that was that they were trying to make a big ship like the Nimitz, invisible. So that was the idea. We'll create an invisible warship, but instead of making it invisible, they sent it through time.
And I think the original plan was they were trying to make it invisible to radar.
That's it, yeah.
And there wasn't supposed to be visually visible.
Like they had like an electromagnetic thing set up on the far sides of the ship or something. And it was meant
Tesla
to
was
blanket
definitely involved in that. Tesla was part of that, and a lot of other people that did work on that. And you're right, they had giant electromagnetic devices, and the ship disappeared, and it reappeared. And people were like half in the hull, half out of the hull. Like people were basically floating in a space-time thing, and somehow it showed back up. And people, when they're floating, like there was a railing, and there was a guy with like his leg stuck in the middle.
Yeah, some people were like fused into the metal work of the ship. I mean, obviously, this is still a relatively contested thing because not some people believe this isn't real, and there isn't hardcore evidence that the Philadelphia experiment took place, but I would wager that it's more likely that this was something that happened. And there is apparently, and I can't remember, but I'll try and dig it up. But the actual name of the ship isn't the one that's the traditional conspiracy theory that everyone's heard of, and it's actually a different name. And there seems to have been some kind of shuffling of the cards in terms of the stories told, and the more popular one seems to be a bit of a smoke and mirror. And there's actually another story that is the same story but a different ship, and that might be the legit one.
This is a relevant quote, right? So according to many Montauk researchers, the financing for the base is a mystery. Who writes the paychecks has not been discovered yet. None of the local people seem to know the full story of what's gone on there. Insiders believe the Montauk project was a development and culmination of the phenomena encountered aboard the USS Eldridge in 1943. The movie The Philadelphia Experiment is a Hollywood imaginative fiction production of disinfo piece. Please refuse to base any belief, disbelief, or opinion on that movie. Popularly known as the infamous Philadelphia Experiment, the ship actually disappeared while the Navy conducted radar and visibility experiments, according to believers. Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Wilhelm Reich, and the infamous German creator of the bomb, John von Neumann, are all related to the project itself. Associated with the Poynton base is a huge radar assembly that seems to have induced electronic mind surveillance, control of distinct populations, and much weird behavior of people and animals on the island. I can believe that. So the other side of it is obviously the time travel stuff. So that goes on to say something about quantum physics deals with a vast arena of physical phenomenon which show quantum behavior on a time and space scale well within the world of human perception. Also to be considered is the effect that an observer has upon a physical system, which cannot be objectively understood without accepting the existence of parallel universes. How's that? So, nothing new, I suppose, but apparently they've been doing it and are doing it.
Yeah, why would they stop?
So is there anything else that we want to cover when it comes to John Warner, this book? Is there any other emails, any other notes? Well, actually, one thing I'd like to ask real quick is he said that the books are good to read, but if you want a quick version just to read the notes, are the notes publicly available, or has he just sent you the notes?
They were the ones that he sent us. They're in that folder for you guys, yeah.
Right, okay.
And again, he, as far as I know, until I get the nod anyway, but he said that everything he sent can be
everything he sent. So if we get confirmation from him, obviously my intention would probably be to compile those notes and let them be publicly available so that people can get a quicker idea. But obviously we'll have to wait on confirmation from John for that.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I suppose, exactly. I suppose what we can do if he doesn't go with that is just point everybody to chapter 108 of his book.
Seems to be a very poignant chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And his introduction to the book, and then also all the other interviews and all the things you can find online.
Yeah.
Just have a look, you'll find it all. And I think that you'll all be equally as blown away.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because I mean, because it's undeniably strange subject matter that we've been discussing here, but I think it's really important, especially like if we're going to wrap this up soon, just to highlight some of the key reasons behind why we're giving these ideas and this material our time, and why do we think it's worth discussing? Well, for starters, our friend Jean here stumbled by sheer coincidence or, synchronicity, depending on how you view this, stumbled across an obscure alternative history forum called the Axis History Forum. And it was here that he saw a post by John Warner IV. And, he included a link to his website in the forum post. And now we have all visited the website. And it does have some short podcasts recorded by John Warner, including a fascinating conversation between himself and his father, Senator John Warner III. He also has a part 2 conversations with UK defense analyst and author of the book, The Hunt for Zero Point, Nick Cook. And in these podcasts, which, we'll link in the description box below, so make sure you check them out, Mr. John Warner really does represent himself as a well-read and highly intelligent individual, doesn't come across as having a big ego at all, despite his extremely unique upbringing. And, that brings me to another point, which is that he's a member of both the Warner and Mellon families. He's the third cousin of Christopher Mellon. And, that's a big deal on its own, to be honest, because they're good friends. And Christopher Mellon's one of the flag bearers of UAP transparency right now, who's been described by the former ATIP director Lou Elizondo as a master strategist. So, John Warner and his cousin Christopher Mellon, good friends, and I think that that's an important thing to highlight, because this man is not like the crazy eccentric guy with the weird theories. He's a respected member of his family who has said himself many times that the conclusions and beliefs he's arrived at in relation to the UAP issue are due to the fact that he's within these families and the networking capabilities afforded to him by the legacy that his family has created. And that does seem to stretch pretty much to every corner of the defense intelligence apparatus of America. And so, these things can only bolster his credibility further, in my opinion. And I think it's also important just to highlight that this man has not been trying to insert himself into the UFO community. You know what I mean? He did not come to Jean. He didn't reach out.
He won't communicate on Twitter either.
No.
Couple of times said hey on Twitter and got an email pretty quickly saying don't do that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair enough. It's like,
my just one last point I wanted to make, and I've said it before, but I just wanted to kind of highlight this one more time, is the fact that the books themselves, this 3-part series called Little Anton, is not a UFO book at all. It's actually a work of historical fiction that's based, primarily on this car company Porsche and their involvement in World War II and the Nazi Party, but within this 3-part series, which takes you on like a thriller-style journey through World War II espionage and car racing. Within this, he has embedded information about Nazi occult practices, exotic technology innovations that relate to, the capabilities of UAP, an alternative human origin story that involves the Sumerian creation myth regarding the Anunnaki, secret societies, upper echelon clubs that have been a stronghold basically over planetary interests. And all of this has been basically put into what has essentially been promoted as a book on the history of Porsche's Porsche the car company, which that blows my mind a bit, that it's not advertised as this, but when you open the pages, boom, it's right there.
Yeah, it's also a massive book, so and he challenges you to read it all to the end. It's like, I challenge you to read it all to the end and you might have a surprise, literally like that. So I wonder how many people actually got to the end, because it is vast. Yeah?
Well, I'm patiently waiting for my books to arrive, and I will read all of them.
I'm still going. I keep getting stuck on chapter 108.
Yeah, just keep coming back to it.
I know. I thought you were messing with me. You're like, read chapter 108. I said, 108? Are you fucking with me?
Chapter 100. No, there really is, and that's nowhere near the end.
That's crazy.
No, and obviously, and chapter and book 2. Or volume 2 is coming at some point, and that's when we start looking at the meeting in Washington with the Graves.
So does chapter 2? I mean, is the second book going to be a sequel, or is this just a straight different book?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know?
I guess it kind of. He hasn't said if it's a sequel. It sounds like it is. It's basically the next bit, isn't it? It's like after World War II.
Okay. Yeah.
Next. And he goes. It's much more focused on disclosure than book 1. So, That'll be very interesting.
No doubt. I mean, there's when you think about this in the world of editors and publishers and things like that, I mean, we've heard all these stories a long time too, and we haven't talked about this, and I want to talk about just real briefly here, but like there's a lot of times where, I mean, there was a guy that reached out to me, you know, and I kind of shared it with you guys too recently. It was like, I got this book, but the editor wants me to pull this stuff out because they don't want to, it's too much woo or whatever, you know, and it's like, well, that's the shit that people should be listening to, you know, but you got to think about all these different publishers and editors and, you know, whatever. And like John Warner has definitely said, you know, there's so many different people that have the media, and you know there's all these different levels of control, and you know don't want to get this message out. This book got out fine, and I'm guessing is because it's John Warner the Fourth who said screw it, I'll print it myself, or I'm not sure, I'm just making stuff up though, but you know what I mean, like he didn't have any problems putting that chapter in there.
No.
You know, and getting it out. I mean, everybody can self-publish and do those things now with the internet and everything, but still, I mean, it's like, you know, it seemed like if he wasn't greenlit, they're definitely not messing with him. And I know you didn't find the email, but supposedly they're not messing with him or us. So there's something going on.
He did mention how he'd been kind of like semi-warned by some members of the family, right, or some intelligence guys. Yeah. Like I have had people sit me down or maybe say, you know, be careful with certain things, but he seems to be on board for just putting it out there as he sees it.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I'm not going to say his direct quote on that, but like, yeah, it's just like his take on it is, this is my truth, this is what I'm saying, I stand by it, and if you don't want the people, basically, he says the people who don't want him to do it are being essentially lily-livered. That's a nice way of putting it, I suppose. Like, because I don't know. I mean, I suppose I should be looking at the quotes instead of just making it up, but. He doesn't seem to have any scruples about saying this. He thinks that this is what needs to happen. He thinks it's like if anybody has a problem, then they're wrong. And it's like the way that he wrote those notes. I mean, I was reading a lot of them yesterday or earlier on this chat, where he's talking about, you know, listen up, dummy. The first thing you need to realise is there's no death. Next,
yeah, I like that. I like that. Get over that.
Religion. Yeah. Next is no religion. Where? Get over it. Next. You know, Sumerian gods rule the earth still. Next.
Throw your degree in the trash. Next.
Yeah.
If you want to, it's like if you want to start talking about this properly, get over all your bullshit.
It is basically a slap in the face, cold water to the face kind of thing, where it's just look, mate, wake up.
As opposed to TTSA, which is like, let's turn this into like the Pepsi Coca of dystopia.
Yeah.
And like make everybody like really happy and it's all hopeful and all that, and make it with nice beautifully filmed things to make it, but then in the end it's like the satanic cults that rule the earth.
But how do you
UFOs are connected to it.
How do you get that out?
Here is a really nicely, glossily made film, which hopefully will make that feel a little less worrying.
Well, I think in all honesty, I think that was genuinely part of the game plan. Was like, right, okay, we'll use this in entertainment industry because you know that's something that Tom was saying was like. I offered them a service. I came with an idea that they didn't have before. They didn't have the ability to create this kind of stuff because I'm the one that came in with those types of networks. And I don't think that was ego. I think that's legit. Like he comes from the entertainment industry, but he also has a unique knowledge set with this subject. That's why he's so unique. That's why it was almost destiny that this guy, you know, got involved with these people because he's this guy that has the networking connections within the entertainment industry to put something like this together, but at the same time is within this extreme niche, especially within celebrities, who's super into UFOs and understands the history and seem to be able to go to them with a bit of a background knowledge. So it's no surprise that, you know, this happened, but I do think that that's probably part of it. It's like, right, okay, Tom, this is what's happening then. Boom, 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 boom. Here's some really scary shit. Can you turn that into something that's palatable for the public? And he's like, oh my God, like, you know, I had sleepless nights. And it's like, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all.
But I think you have to, though. There's no other way around it. There's other people, if you go back to the War of Worlds example, people jump off bridges and shit.
Yeah.
And if you don't turn it into something that's a little bit happy, especially for kids, or
dude.
Starting kids out now, you know what I mean? Or younger adults or whatever, to get them ready. I mean, there's a lot of people that'll fuck up. Yeah, Star Wars, right.
Star Wars is getting the kids ready. You know, like
E.T.,
really
Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Well, if you want to, I mean, John said that in his notes too. Like he's put down Spielberg was read in. Like he was what, you know.
A few people have said that. To be
Look
fair.
at everything he made at that time and the people who he was involved.
Yeah.
James Cameron and all those guys.
Yeah, and James Cameron and other. But anyway, Spielberg is specifically mentioned in John's notes. Excuse me, that he was kind of read into it. So if you look at, and also I'm guessing George Lucas, because if you look at what they were doing, especially Spielberg, because he was doing Indiana Jones, which is pure OSS heaven.
Yeah, when you look back on it with different glasses, you go, oh, wow.
Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
All right? They might have as well have called it Paul Mellon and the Vril Witches of Tool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Actually, I need to rewatch that one because I watched that before I jumped into the subject. So I need to look at that film again and reassess what I think about it.
Mate, come on, you gotta laugh at this shit.
You really do. You need to come up with the graphic for that. Just superimpose Paul Mellon's face on that on the poster
with the whip, like holding a Nazi in one hand and the whip in the other. Like, yeah.
All due respect, yeah, totally. With Carl Jung floating behind.
Yeah. With the
ghost of Carl Jung.
Yeah. Indiana Jones and the ghost of Carl Jung.
Maybe he was Yoda in the Star Wars stories.
Oh yeah, maybe. But this is the thing, this stuff that's within our culture through the film industry. It's not so far outside of the realm of possibility that these things are being seeded in so many different ways through books, through films, through music, through anything that's able to be disseminated out to the public in a nuanced fashion where it's subconsciously taken in to
Jay's frozen.
Oh, Jay's frozen, man. Jay.
Like that thing, so I can at least
attribute
Jay,
it to just froze for a second, man. You might want to back it up a second.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, no, I was just saying, with these things that have been put into our culture, these different films and TV programs and stuff, it's not so far outside of the realm of possibility that they've been disseminated out into the public, because it's a good way of putting something out in a nuanced fashion, and people will subconsciously take it in. And so if something does come into the world in reality that is similar, at least they can correlate it to something that they've experienced through film or TV or a book. And so I don't think it's so outrageous to imagine that certain very key high profile directors, especially ones that specialized in science fiction, were approached and gone, look, here's some information. You are going to have to sign a document just to say, you can't speak of this, but we're going to insert some information into your film, or something along those lines. And I don't think that's too far outside the realm of possible.
Nah, my old man told me that. Back when I was a kid, he told me that, and that was, I'm 41, too, whatever. I don't remember anymore.
Who's counting?
Yeah,
who's counting?
So, but he said there's a plan. It's going to be like a 50-year plan or a 70-year plan or whatever it is, and they're just going to keep slowly putting the shit out there until everybody's just like no big deal anymore. And I've seen that in my short life. Within 40 years, if you just go back 40 years and look at it, to get Star Wars is even before that, right? So even for 50 years now, it's been going on. So we're going to probably be hitting that pinnacle. I think Lou Elizondo said in a lot of his quotes is like, all this shit has a shelf life. Secrets have a shelf life, right? You can't keep it forever.
Well, it's like the fact that he called it that chapter 108 in Little Anton 108. I'd heard the number 108 in some of the reading I'd done before. So one of the first things I do is go, well, that was one of the most mind-blowing chapters of anything I've ever read. So what number was the chapter? Number 108. All right, why is it a number 108? So then you read what 108 is, and 108 is the number of Metatron's cube.
Metatron's cube, oh, right, okay. Now, some people might not know what Metatron's cube is. Are you able to give us a little succinct explanation for what that is? Kind of,
it all goes back to it's Hebrew as well, right? So it goes back to Hebrew, and it's named after the archangel Metatron, right? Who watches over the flow of energy. It includes all 5 platonic solids. Are inside, symbolizing the underlying geometric patterns found throughout our universe.
Wow.
Right. I know here's a picture of it, but you've seen this picture before in a billion other things. And Jay, I think it is your symbol in Project Unity.
Well, that would be awesome if it was. I chose that symbol just because I was looking for some form of sacred geometry that I like the look of, and then I saw that. So
I think it is, man.
That's pretty cool if that's what it is. And you know what's interesting is I can't remember which podcast it was on. So everyone listening, if you want to hear this, you're just going to have to try and trawl through there's not that many. There's only a few little snippets on John Warner's website, which are these little podcasts. But he was talking, I think it might have been to Nick Cook. I'm pretty sure it was to Nick Cook, actually. And he was just saying about how geometrics, I can't remember the exact quote, but he was basically going like, yeah, man, like, geometrics essentially are what creates the universe. The universe is created from these energetic, sacred geometric patterns. And that's what's echoed into symbology and through secret societies is these beautiful geometric structures and patterns, which essentially are the building blocks of the universe. And, these are the things that underneath everything are creating the universe. And I thought that was quite interesting because, spiritual geometry is a really interesting thing for me, especially because, when you look at the realms of psychedelia, so many different experiences through psychedelics begin with geometric patterns and structures emerging from your environment. So your physical environment shifts, and you start seeing geometrics, like almost like the kaleidoscope vision that people sometimes imagine with psychedelics. But that is actually quite true, that on strong psychedelic experiences, things can essentially melt away and become these strange geometric structures. And so it was interesting that John was bringing up the fact that geometric, sacred geometry, and these mathematical symbols essentially are what are projecting the universe. And then when you go into transcendental or psychedelic experiences, one of the first things that you see is geometrics popping up out of the woodwork. Essentially, it's almost like, the stuff behind me looks like this right now, but if you were to fade it away to its most basic component, it's a complex geometric mathematical construct of energy that is forming this. And that's pretty mind-blowing stuff. But hell, could be real. Probably is real. I personally do think about that kind of thing and go, yeah, I could imagine that is how it's represented, at least on this dimension, right? It's kind of like it goes into the whole idea of observation of dimensional objects. And when you have physicists that create 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th dimensional objects, they are very beautiful, mathematical, symmetrical geometrics. That's what it is. And so, yeah, if the universe is essentially some form of simulation based on what we would consider to be mathematics, then I guess at the root of it, you've got geometric patterns.
Basically, here it is. Metatron's cube contains every shape that exists in the universe God has created, and those shapes are the building blocks of all physical matter.
Amazing. That is pretty much verbatim what John said. So he was probably taking it directly from his understandings of Metatron's cube. But that's essentially verbatim what he said in his podcast. So that's awesome.
Shit. Interesting stuff.
We should probably kind of
wrap it
up. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we might as well. I think we might as well wrap this up here because we've been going for 3 days now, which is amazing, and I've really enjoyed this. But I think we've covered pretty much everything that we could cover right now. So I think the best thing to do would probably be to wrap this up and encourage everyone listening to hit the description box below, have a little look at the links. We're gonna include a lot of different links, including links to John Warner's website and his podcasts, and obviously the book Little Anton. So we would encourage you all to just do your own due diligence, check it out, and come to your own conclusions.
That's it. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jean-Luc. Thank you for finding this guy and reaching out to him, and then reaching out to us and sharing this with us and helping us be involved in this. It's amazing.
Yeah. Really again, this all starts with you, bro. So
Yeah.
Well done, Carl Jung.
You think Carl Jung?